Welcome everyone. Good afternoon. I'm Simon Yoss and I'm joined by my colleague Justine Gagne. We're from the Urban Big Data Centre at the University of Glasgow, and we spent the last 6 to 8 months absorbed in an intensive research project on how Scottish local government have responded to COVID in terms of their data, practices and engagement. And yesterday we published our report. And so we thought that you should be among the first to receive our report and to hear our summary of the key findings. Several among you participated in our research, and I'd like to take the opportunity to thank you for your participation. So Justin and I are going to spend about 25 minutes or so providing you with an overview, a summary of our main findings. And then we'll follow up with question and answer. Now, I mentioned that this research was undertaken at the Urban Big Data Centre, but it's really important to emphasize that we relied on two essential external support sources. First of all, we benefited from funding from the Economic and Social Research Council, which is part of UK Research and Innovation. We've got a couple of participants here, and I hope that this report demonstrates how social sciences can make a useful contribution to understanding data in the context of COVID. And the second external source is the Digital Office. Right from the beginning, Justin and I decided that we didn't want our research only to be relevant to academia, but that we wanted it to have a positive impact on data practices and policy. And that's why we teamed up with the Digital Office. And I have to say that they were absolutely instrumental in enabling us to conduct our research. So I'd like to take the opportunity in particular to thank Kimberly Hose and Colin Birchnell for their support. And I believe Colin would like to say a few words. So I now hand over to Colin, please.
Thank you, Simon, and thanks for those kind comments as well. I just want to first of all thank Simon and Justine for this piece of research and the opportunity to work with them to undertake the research. We have obviously seen a huge impact in terms of how we use data within local government, how it's been used to support the local government and indeed the wider public sector's response to COVID-19, and the collaboration that we've seen across the sector and indeed the wider public sector as well. What this research offers us is an opportunity to draw breath and capture the learning from that experience, and rather than it being lessons learned that's been prepared by local government itself, it's an external body that has actually used formal research methods to draw the conclusions of their analysis. So for me, this is a really valuable piece of research. It isn't just some academic research findings. The recommendations, the findings in this report, I think personally will provide some really valuable references that we could use to inform policy and practice, as Simon has identified. And what I'd like to do now is to start to use this as evidence for the impact that data has had during the pandemic, to help justify the case for investment in policy and practice around how we make this sustainable. So thanks, Sam.
Thank you very much, Colin. And what I now would like to do, just in a couple of slides, to give you a little bit more contextual information before Justin will then start to present the findings. And as we've said, the main focus of our research has been on analysing local governments' data practices and engagement during COVID and in response to COVID. And when you look at our report, you will see that we've included 15 key findings, and we've arranged these under 4 overarching themes, and you can see them listed here. And this is also how we're going to structure our presentation now. So we'll start by talking about the experience of rapid response and innovation on the part of local government, with a main focus on public sector data. The second theme then focuses on how existing challenges were amplified as a result of the crisis. And then we'll turn to the third theme, which has a focus, the sharing of data, both within local government, across local government, between local government and other public sector organizations, and also between local government and the third sector. And then in the final theme, we want to highlight participants' reflections on what we can learn from the last 12 months in terms of how we wish to take data practices forward in the future. Just a few words about methodology, and again, you will find a full write-up in our report. As you can see here, we've used 3 main tools, and we've done so in order to achieve what is sometimes referred to as methodological triangulation. So using different methodological procedures to generate different sources of data, which then allow us to generate findings which have validity. So the 3 tools that we've used, first of all, a quantitative survey, which we sent out via the digital office to the 32 local authorities. And in each local authority, we invited 1 participant with a data background and 1 participant working in the recovery side of the crisis. And as you can see, we had a really tremendously strong response rate by any standard, an excellent response rate. And of course, that's thanks to all the participants. 45 out of the 64 invitees participated, and the figure is even more impressive when we look at the overall number of participating local authorities, 31 out of 32. And of course, I'm not going to reveal which local authority chose not to participate in the survey. We then complemented this quantitative method with qualitative insights through a series of focus groups. We have had 1 focus group where we brought together local authority participants in discussion among themselves. And one of the interesting points we wanted to tease out was to see whether there was any significant difference between the experience of rural local authorities and more urban authorities. And in fact, we couldn't really discern any significant difference. A second focus group brought together local authorities with other public sector organizations. And here the aim was to really focus on the sharing aspect, data sharing aspect. And then we run a third focus group where we brought together local authorities with third sector organizations. Now, in addition to the focus group, we also ran a number of individual expert interviews. And here the aim was to talk to organizations that have a cross-Scottish engagement in the data sphere. So that gives you the overview of the project, and I'm now going to hand over to Justin, please.
Yeah, thank you, Simon, and hi again, everyone. So I'm going to turn to the first theme of our report, our research. The first key finding here is around the rapid increase in data demand that local governments experience COVID and the intensification of their data use. So you can see that governments have experienced an increase of data sharing both internally in local authorities, but also externally. In the report and in the survey in particular, a number of respondents reported the acquisition of new data and the use of new sources of data, in particular, obviously health-related data that was shared by NHS public bodies, which is explained by the nature of the crisis. And what is also interesting, and that comes out from our research, is the rapid development of innovative solutions to integrate and analyze data by local government. And this data was coming from multiple data sets, again, internally and externally. And some initiatives were around the creation of dashboards, other initiatives focus more around collaboration, and we will touch upon that later on in the presentation. So here on the right, just quickly, you have an excerpt from the survey results. So it's question number 6, and you can see that 83% of respondents reported an increase in data sharing internally. 78% reported using new sources of data, as well as the increasing the use of data visualization tools. By comparison, you can see at the bottom of the table that only 4% reported the recruitment of additional staff with data expertise. Next slide, please. Thank you. So the second key finding of our research is that a local government really mobilized existing public sector data, and that was to really deliver essential services and to support vulnerable groups. And you can see this in the survey as well. So the excerpt is on question number 7 here on the table on the right, when 91% of respondents reported using data to tailor local support, and 87% to prioritize essential services. And you can see, by contrast, only 22% of respondents reported using data to measure public compliance with COVID-19 related. Really, the focus was delivering essential services, identifying vulnerable groups and supporting them. So as one participant in the focus group puts it, quote unquote, initially we needed to get off the ground data in terms of how did we record what people were requiring, particularly in relation to food and pharmacy and medicine and any other needs. So really the focus was on public sector data to deliver services. Next slide, please. Yeah. So while we've seen the mobilization of public sector data in response to COVID-19, we have seen an only limited use of novel data. And we understand by novel data, digital data that is generated via user application or platforms such as social media data, or generated via connected infrastructure and Internet of Things, such as sensor data. The research really shows only a limited use of this type of data for to respond to COVID-19. As one participant puts it, novel data is not an area we did a lot of analytics in. And this was corroborated in our survey. As you can see in the bar chart graph, 36% of participants actually reported using none of the above, so no novel type of data in response to COVID-19. And 25% use social media data, and only 4% crowdsourced data, cellular data. While there was a limited use of novel data, participants across the board, so in interviews, in focus group, as well as in the survey, recognize the potential of this type of data. For example, 62% of participants in the survey stated that novel data would become quite or very important in the coming period. So there was an expectation of future relevance for this type of data. And I will hand it back to Simon for our theme number 2.
Thank you very much. So the second theme is interested in exploring challenges naturally as local government engaged more in data practices, rising demands and uses. They inevitably encountered some challenges and difficulties on the way, and we were interested in exploring with them what these challenges were and what kind of innovative responses they came up with. And first of all, looking on the left of the slide, participants highlighted 3 types of challenges, starting with the quality of data. So here the message is that we cannot assume as a matter of course that the quality of data is necessarily assured, but instead what participants highlighted was that often data sets might be, or data contained within data sets might be partially inaccurate, it might be partially incomplete, or there might be duplicate data. And so a great effort has to go into the cleansing of data. So data quality cannot be taken as a matter of course. It has to be generated first. A second challenge relates to the sharing of data. And here, time and again, participants flagged up the importance of common identifiers, and that sometimes these common identifiers weren't readily available. And so the future focus has to be on making sure that there are these common identifiers which allow data within an organization, but also across organizations, to be shared more readily. And related to that, more broadly, the need for templates, for standardized data standards, so that the sharing process can be made more easy. And the third challenge they highlighted was some of the legacy systems. Legacy systems that were actually still in use, but which weren't necessarily compatible with more recent systems. So again, that is something that needs addressing. And in terms of a wider context, participants highlighted that, of course, this takes place within a local government context. And local government are complex organizations, necessarily so because they deliver quite a diverse range of public services. So the sharing within a local authority, but also across local authorities, is something that really has to be developed. And we can see these findings also reflected here on the right. This is from the survey, question number 17, where we asked respondents to rank different challenges. And here you can see the different challenges and the relative ranking. So, for example, integrating data matching and interoperability, as well as ensuring data quality, were ranked as being particularly challenging, more so than, for example, at the bottom of the table, GDPR compliance or data security. Now, participants also spoke to the criticality of improving skills and related debates about targeted investment. So participants distinguish between different kinds of skills needed in order to succeed with data engagement and practices. First of all, there are, of course, technical skills and data know-how. So participants highlighted analytical skills, technical skills to integrate data, as well as the ability to use particular technical software. So that's one type of skills where there is a need for development. But participants also highlighted the importance of broader data literacy, which goes beyond the technical, which relates to a broader appreciation and understanding of data within an organization and across organizations. And so this relates not just to data specialists, but also to decision makers, different people within the organization who increasingly have to deal with data. And then the third point they were making was that given that investment opportunities are often scarce, we need to have a really good analysis of specific needs so that we can then channel targeted investment towards these skills developments. And again, you can see that reflected on the right. This is question number 13 from the survey, where we presented participants with different development areas for data capabilities, and we asked them to rank the relative importance. Now, actually, one participant in the discussion said, but of course, all of these are important, and that's right. But nonetheless, it's interesting to see the ranking by the survey participants. So data analytics, internal data harmonization top the ranking, whereas data software and human resources were a little bit further down. So over now to Justin.
Thank you, Simon. I'm sorry, I'm just going to have to keep my camera off for connection issues. But anyway, hopefully you can still hear me. So let's go to theme number 3, which connects to data sharing. And so our research really found that in response to the crisis, local government have experienced an intensification of data sharing, and in particular with public sector organizations. 70% of survey respondents reported an increase in external data sharing broadly, so that includes public sector organizations, but also other sectors. 65% reported the implementation of data sharing agreements in response to the crisis, and 84% reported data-related collaboration with public sector organizations, and 78% with other Scottish local authorities. So there were a lot of sharing and collaboration happening in response to the crisis. Initially, it was more a case-by-case approach to data sharing agreement to meet the rapid demand for data, as we've seen in theme number 1. Participants spoke to uneven access to data and a frequently disjointed approach. However, throughout the crisis, we have seen a consolidation of collaboration to coordinate practices in terms of data sharing agreement, for instance, with the development and implementation of the data sharing framework known as the Data Accord between the local government and NHS, as well as the sharing of the learning of how to successfully develop a data sharing agreement. Another key insight that comes out from our research is the data sharing that was happening between local government and the third sector. And here we qualify this as more ad hoc data sharing. So the research shows that there's been a strong engagement by local authorities with the third sector in the context of COVID-19. So 80% of respondents noted that they use data to coordinate volunteering and community responses. However, during the focus group, participants both from local authorities and from the third sector really put an emphasis on the ad hoc character of the data sharing that was taking place between local government and third sector. So you can see here on the right bottom, there is a quote from the focus group which really put this emphasis on the fact that data sharing was taking place, but maybe not as systematically or larger scale as it could be. Furthermore, third sector organizations also really talked to the significant burden that data sharing put on their organization, and some raised concern also about handling personal data. And you can see that in the top quote from a third sector organization, saying that it's really onerous request that takes a lot of time and sometimes duplicated as well. So these ad hoc data sharing were also exacerbated by lack of data standard across the third sector, across the local government, and between both sectors as well.
So let's now turn to theme 4, the fourth and final theme, where we invited participants to reflect on the last 12 months and what we can take from the management of the crisis through various data engagements and practices as we move through the recovery into the future. And participants evidently reflected the very difficult times that local government faced, but at the same time, they also positively highlighted that the crisis really helped to open up conversations about data. And they thought that across local government now, data was much more broadly recognized, its value, its contribution to gathering information, making decisions, and that this recognition of the value of data now extended far beyond small teams of data specialists. So that was seen as really a positive development. Participants also thought that there was potential to further strengthen existing collaborative networks, such as the COVID-19 Data Intelligence Network by the Scottish Government, or the Local Government Data Task Force by the Digital Office. Participants also discussed the opportunity to develop further partnerships, and they in particular singled out partnerships with the private sector, but also with academia. And that's reflected in the survey question number 16, shown on the right here, where 43% of respondents indicated that collaborating with other stakeholders was a significant opportunity. And again, it's reflected by one of the participants from a local authority who was saying this, it's what we can do together. It's, yes, what we can do individually, but actually there's real merit in working together, what we can achieve jointly. And another broad agreement by the participants was about ultimately the importance of our data practices being in the public interest. So survey participants indicated that there was already some wider public engagement taking place. 27% reported collaborations with grassroots organizations and 20% with citizens. But there was also consensus that more could be done. And there was agreement that it was important to demonstrate tangible benefits to the public in order for the public to embrace data use and to engender public trust. And in this discussion, it was interesting also to hear that rather than each local government proceeding individually, again, there is a real benefit in joining forces, and they mentioned on a number of occasions the opportunity of developing and further strengthening the national approach. And this is here reflected by this quote from a third sector organization who really emphasizes the importance of a common approach, of common standards, ultimately in order to place citizens at the center of our data practices. Justin, please.
Yeah, thank you, Simon. So drawing on the findings that we have highlighted, and please refer back to the report for more details on these findings, the report offers a series of recommendations for policy and for practice. So we have clustered them under 4 headlines. So the first one is around how do we build on a recent achievement? Secondly, how do we address the challenges that local government have encountered in their data engagement in the context of COVID-19? Thirdly, how do we enhance cross-sectorial data sharing? So within the public sector, but also across sectors. And finally, is building up and joining up data practices to address this national agenda. So I will invite you to go into the detail of each of these 15 recommendations in our report